It was mid-November, and winter was settling into the Canadian Rockies. The summer tourism season was long past, and skiing season hadn't begun. So why would anyone choose to visit at this time of year? For one, it might be the quietest you'll ever find these popular mountains. The lakes are still open to reflect the now snowy slopes. But most of all, we had a very important event to attend. The Canadian Rockies, the iconic mountains straddling the provinces of Alberta and British Columbia. Standing beneath them, these lofty rocks stir the heart, earning them a spot on many a traveler's bucket list. So when choosing where to have one of the biggest days of our lives, the Rockies fit the bill. Ahead of us was a trip full of snowy mountain panoramas, national parks and natural wonders, fireplaces and inspired accommodations, and a day we'll never forget. Our trip begins with a flight from Thunder Bay, Ontario to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then a second to take us across the prairies onto Calgary, Alberta, and the edge of the Rockies. With my groomswoman, aka sisters, arriving from Southern Ontario, things got silly rather quickly. We would spend the weekend in Calgary in a nice Airbnb to make sure all of our party arrived safely and for a few final preparations before hitting the road for the mountains. With all 6 of us there, we wasted no time in getting the festivities underway.
Cheers!
The next day we zipped around the city and got ourselves presentable. The ladies were booked at the salon, so I decided to join them for my first pedicure, and I'll admit that my feet never felt better. With sparkly clean feet, we walked around downtown and enjoyed our final night there. Alright, after a great stay in Calgary, we are headed for the Rockies.
Woo!
Got my sister Sarah, sister Laura in this car, and then behind us is Erin with her sister Kessia and Leanne, who's like a sister. So we're really excited to get to the Rockies after a great stay in Calgary. We were ready to rock, with 5 national parks ahead of us and our next accommodations planted right inside one of them. Awaiting us that night was a fairy tale lodge, but we had plenty to see on the way. Excitement levels were sky high as the mountains rose up from the horizon. Trapped inside the car, there was only one outlet for all that excess energy. Even from the highway, the views had us spellbound, but we jumped at the first chance to step out of the cars and take it all in. Mountains!
Hey, mountains!
Woohoo! 3 sisters.
It's actually these.
Next was a quick stop in Canmore to pick up some meds for Erin, who felt like she was coming down with something. Our big day was just 72 hours away, but we stayed optimistic, and if you've seen our wilderness trips, you know that Erin's a trooper. So we carried on toward Banff, the first of 5 national parks on our tour, stopping at a short hike that overlooks the town and surrounding peaks like Tunnel Mountain, as well as these unusual products of erosion called hoodoos. As we descended down into Banff, we got our first wildlife sighting of the trip with this nice bull elk. Arriving at the main strip, we were greeted by the mountain town charm that Banff is famous for. A charm that was only amplified when these big fluffy snowflakes started to fall. The snow was not quite as fun on the roads, but it tapered off, providing the rest of our drive with a fresh white coat. There were no real mountains back home, so for us this was a non-stop visual feast. We passed a number of wildlife corridors which allow the Rockies' rich wildlife to pass over top, including grizzly and black bears, cougars and wolves, and deer, moose, and elk, among others. Late in the afternoon, we entered Yoho National Park, bringing us out of Alberta and into British Columbia, but we'd be back for more Banff later. Daylight was fading as we exited the highway for the lodge, but even the road in had a magical allure. Just pulling into Emerald Lake Lodge. It looks absolutely stunning. It's off-grid, there's no internet or no Wi-Fi in the rooms or cell signal. Right in the heart of Yoho National Park. This scene is just the parking area and staff quarters. We took the shuttle over to the lodge, but had lost the light by this point, creating a great deal of suspense as we'd have to wait for morning to see the views. So we enjoyed the chalet-style lounge by the fire while Aaron got some much-needed rest. Good morning. Got into our room last night and it was dark, but we're in there. I might give you a look when it's less of a mess, but we're finally getting the light. And look at this view. Here's my beautiful bride. Sadly under the weather, but she's being a trooper as always. And look at this. So beautiful. Wow. And here's the main lodge. Breakfast here this morning. Soak up the view first.
Oh my god. Sarah's reaction right now.
Unreal.
She grabbed my hand. It's so, oh my god.
It is just unreal. How's the view?
Delicious. Amazing. Delicious.
A nice bowing snowman to welcome you into the lodge.
I don't think he was bowing last night.
I don't think so either. We strolled down to the lodge entrance and soaked in our first real views of Emerald Lake. Breakfast time. We made full use of the tasty breakfast buffet during our stay here. After breakfast, we went back to our rooms to change for a hike. Back to the room, getting some nice hot drinks for Erin. She's just gonna relax here for a bit by the fire and soak in this view. The rest of us are gonna go for a little hike while she rests. With Erin as snug as a bug in a rug, we started the Emerald Lake Loop, an easy 5-kilometer stroll around the lake, but with inspiring views. We said the word wow continually as we hiked, and though the footage can never do it justice, you can see why we chose this spot for our wedding. We'd been struggling to pick somewhere to have an intimate wedding, but as soon as Erin proposed the Rockies, all the pieces fell into place. With low stress being a top priority for our wedding, we hired a wedding planner to handle things since we were from out of town. She had 3 mountain packages, and after reading the Emerald Lake would be the quietest one, our decision was made. Stunning hike around the lake. First trail that we've done, and a wonderful start. Couldn't look more beautiful. That's all you got?
Come on, bring it on! Ah! How do you like that, bitch? It was Jonathan's idea. Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, so you can throw one further.
It's so cool to be like canoeing and see all the fishies underneath. Seriously.
The azure waters sometimes seen in mountain lakes are caused by glacial erosion of bedrock, creating a fine rock dust that sits in the water and reflects the blue-green wavelengths in the visible spectrum.
Those mountains over there are stunning.
I know, eh?
So pretty. Ooh, that big guy.
Though not giants for the west coast, there were still some impressive trees here.
Hello.
We're back to the rooms after the hike. Erin's back up. Gonna go to the lounge and get some lunch.
Yeah.
Sun's breaking through. Looks just gorgeous. After a late lunch in the lounge, we went up to the second floor for a little pool on this very large snooker table. The main chalet was built in 1902, and there's a luxurious feeling of history here. And with no TVs or internet in the rooms, the lounge becomes a gathering place for guests. No internet also meant calling each other's rooms on the landline phones, which was a fun throwback to the way we used to make plans when we were kids. With lots of sleep, Erin was starting to feel better, and it was just in time. Waking up to this is just unreal. It's the morning before our wedding, and I can't think of a more perfect place to spend it. It's supposed to snow all day lately, so just a winter wonderland. The plan today was some low-key bachelor and bachelorette celebrations.
Nice. Oh,
We're on our way for a day of exploring today. We're splitting up the bridal and groom party, and Erin and her party are ahead of us. They said there's a herd of elk. We met them in the small town of Field, where these wild and free elk had ironically congregated within this fenced park. This one had been tagged, as you can see on its ear. The bridal party was headed back to the town of Banff for the day. I gave Erin a camera, but it went unused, so you'll have to use your imagination. Laura, Sarah, and I continued back into Banff National Park in Alberta, but we opted for new scenery with a hike in Lake Louise on the Fairview Lookout Trail. Just did our first lookout hike, and we're just arriving at the lookout, right over Lake Louise and the Fairmont Hotel. Wow, fairly high.
yeah,
Not bad.
not bad. It was worth it.
We grabbed a few supplies in Lake Louise, and then it was back to the lodge in BC for a decades-old tradition that my sisters and I refer to as Pig. Pig entails lots of junk food, a drink or two, and a favorite show or movie, quite often Lord of the Rings or The Office. A simple tradition, but one that we cherish. With no internet or TV in the rooms, we planned ahead with the download. but forever lurking in the shadows were the Smeagol's. These Stellar's jays and magpies trudged over mountains and through chest-deep snow to follow us, always hoping that we'll drop the precious. Call him! Call him! The Smeagol's are not to be trusted, with their swift wings and deft claws. Like us, they are here for the one ring to rule them all. Call him! Despite the little scream, the crackling fire, scenery, and significance of the day made it a pig to remember with two of my best friends. Before we lost the sun, we popped over to one more attraction near the lodge, a natural rock bridge over this crystal blue river.
What?
Why is it so blue?
Oh, I don't know. Just the glacial dust.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so cool.
We warmed up back in our room and awaited the big day ahead. Well, today's the big day. It's surreal. Can't believe it. Erin's right over there in our room, writing her vows on paper, going to get breakfast, and then the preparations begin. We hired a wedding planner since we have a destination wedding, and that's made it all easy, but yeah, hope all the pieces fall into place perfectly today. Looks like a beautiful day for it. That would be one of about 50 times I use the word surreal on the day. It's hard to find another word to describe waiting to marry your soulmate in a place like this. The forecast called for a mostly clear day with a high of -3 Celsius, which meant that we shouldn't have to worry about rain. And with yesterday's fresh snow and the lake somehow not frozen yet, we couldn't have been happier with the conditions. After breakfast, the fire was lit. Don't forget to open the flue. And our room became hair and makeup central.
Makeup? Oh, hi. Hi.
Naturally, I made myself scarce while Erin and the ladies got ready. It was the nicest day yet, and I was very content to walk around with my camera. I'm just enjoying the lodge today, waiting for the ladies to get ready. All I have to do is put on my suit, it's ready to go. I'll just wrinkle it if I put it on, so just soaking this up in this surreal moment. I'm not sure how to describe these moments other than surreal, but you can imagine the thoughts and feelings occurring beneath these peaks hours before such a moment. I'd planned to record the ceremony for our families, so I got the cameras in position. Slowly, yet quickly,
the hour arrived. Everything went perfectly. The ceremony was short and sweet, which was rather necessary given the freezing temperatures. We had a great time with our wedding photographer, and then as the sun went down, we headed to the dining room for one of several exceptional meals we had there. The food at the lodge was truly gourmet, and we had a great night there celebrating. But the cameras went away, as it was a time to be in the moment.
Well, here we are, man and wife. Our first day. Amazing day yesterday. Can't really put that into words yet.
Yeah.
But our party is leaving today. We're staying. So we're going to enjoy the rest of the time with them in this amazing place. And then we got some more adventuring planned. So, catch you in a bit.
We got in one last short hike with the group before they had to head back to Calgary for their flights home. A huge thanks to our amazing wedding party, and we're also very grateful to our families who supported our elopement-esque wedding.
Ah, the peaceful pond. You can feel the zen.
Phase 3 of the trip was now underway, the honeymoon. Well, part 1 of it anyway. Part 2 of the honeymoon will be a fly-in canoe trip next summer if all goes well. After saying goodbye, we opted for another hike from the lodge to Hamilton Falls.
We just said goodbye to the rest of the group about an hour or two ago, and now we're gonna hike to Hamilton Falls, make the most of the rest of this daylight.
Now we're heading to a beautiful restaurant, the one pictured at the entrance to the lodge.
Everything's gone so well here, and we feel so lucky. This winter wonderland, it couldn't have worked out better.
Oh my goodness. Nothing like this in Ontario. We got a lot of lakes, but no mountains, nothing big.
Gonna stay tuned for the spin-off channel, Lost Mountains. Coming soon.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And this stunning little cabin is where we're having dinner. Oh my goodness. And canoes over there. Unfortunately, it's closed for the season, but
Just finished another fantastic meal here at Emerald Lake, and we'll be saying goodbye to these views tomorrow when we head on to the third phase of the trip. What a stay. After dinner, it was back to the room where the lodge left us a bottle of champagne to celebrate.
Don't be scared.
The heat of the fire rippled the air as we looked out from the balcony on the sunlit peaks, soaking up our final night in a place that will be in our hearts forever.
We're packed up and leaving Emerald Lake. It's been incredible. Perfect venue. Had the best time with our siblings and amazing scenery for our wedding. And we're heading off to Golden for a couple days for phase 3 of our trip. See what we see on the way.
Tearing ourselves away from Emerald Lake, we set out for Golden. The mountain views were perfect in the morning light. As we exited the second national park of the trip, we still had 3 out of 5 left to go. These kindly old sheep wished us well on our marriage, and we thanked them excessively in Canadian fashion. Arriving in Golden, we crossed the frosty Kicking Horse River, where huge crystal plates of ice drifted in the current, destined to join the mighty Columbia River downstream. Then it was on to brunch, and after grabbing a few supplies, we were eager to get to our next accommodations southeast of Golden. We had booked a very modern cabin perched on a mountainside in the Columbia River Valley, though this freezing fog kept us waiting for the view for now. In the meantime, we got settled and lit the stove. As the fog moved out from the valley, the Columbia Mountains' Dogtooth Range came into view. As the sun went down, we felt absolutely at peace, until something struck me. My ring was not on my finger, and I had no idea where it was. And it wasn't any old ring, it was Aaron's grandfather's. We searched the house, but came up with nothing. In the morning, I'd called the places we had been to see if anyone had turned it in. It was a long and restless night.
Where are we going?
So, we're going into town to get something very important. Last night we were watching a movie, and the guy showed his wedding ring, and I went to finger mine, and I realized it was gone, and I couldn't remember the last time I had it. I showered there, so I thought maybe it went down the drain. But anyway, we retraced our steps. I called the places we went to yesterday, and it seems like they have it at the grocery store in Golden, the IGA. So, oh, that was stressful. It's an antique. It's her grandfather's ring, so I did not feel good about immediately losing it.
Yeah, that
Huge
would have been
relief.
really sad. I've had it since I was 16.
Yeah, she always wears it around her neck, or
It was pretty special to pass on to John, so
Yeah,
it was
okay.
really sad.
Fingers crossed they have it.
Yeah.
Aaron called the lawyer and canceled the divorce papers. We're in business. Oh man,
Oh,
what a
relief.
massive relief. Worst feeling as a new husband to lose your wife's grandfather's ring immediately. Well, in 2 days. We knew it had to be resized. Make it like a quarter size smaller, but I thought it would stay on. Anyway,
It's back.
crisis averted.
After that scare and a very busy week, we decided to enjoy our amazing accommodations for the day.
Back to the Airbnb, and we're about to have the best coffee of our lives. Huge relief and this glorious scene.
The forecast called for clouds and a little snow, so it was the perfect day to stay in and make nachos and unwind by the fire. Golden is surrounded by national parks, so we had lots to do in the remaining 2 days.
Day 11 of our Rocky Mountain tour. It's a gray one with low fog, but we're hoping that once we get outside of this valley, the Columbia River Valley, that it's going to clear up. So we're heading for Glacier National Park.
The Rockies are of course bear country, and back in Calgary I bought a can of bear spray for the trip, even though the odds of an incident are very unlikely. And while it's easy to assume they're hibernating at this point in the season, sure enough there was a grizzly spotted at Lake Louise. If human food sources are present, all the more reason for a bear to remain active. I've never had a bad experience, but I respect their power enough to bring bear spray. There was a heavy frost in the Columbia River Valley again today. We headed north in the valley until the highway cut west across the Columbia and back into the mountains in Glacier National Park. The low cloud ceiling persisted, but it was just building the suspense as usual.
We're in the heart of Glacier now, and the weather just broke for us, providing some views just in time. Pretty cool to have it revealed like that. We were kind of thinking that wasn't going to happen. Just look at these peaks. Wow. We just passed a military truck, and it looks like they are launching artillery shells to knock down snow and prevent major avalanches. What a crazy job.
Sounds like bowling on an epic scale. The park reports an average of 14 meters of snowfall at tree line each year. That's 46 feet of snow. Along the 40 kilometers of highway in Rogers Pass, there are 135 avalanche paths. So avalanche control is serious business here, not just for the park, but given that this is part of the Trans-Canada Highway. We passed a few snow sheds, which are designed to deflect sliding snow over top of the highway. Also of note were these snow nets, which are designed to help prevent avalanches from wiping out the road. Next was the fourth national park of the trip, Mount Revelstoke. Aaron was excited for the Giant Cedars boardwalk marked on the map, but this one was closed all year due to structural damage to the boardwalk. Thankfully, there were some giants right at the picnic area where the trail starts. Some of these trees are over 500 years old. Just imagine the world around the year 1500, the end of the Middle Ages, and the fact that these trees could have been there. It makes you wonder why we're still cutting down trees like this. Nothing we can make with the timber could be more valuable or impressive. I've read that the last wolf in England was killed around 1500, and it rattles me to imagine a year when our consumption habits kill the last giant cedar. Hopefully these beauties are safe here in the park, and in any case, we were grateful to get to see them. Next stop was the town of Revelstoke. We got some hot drinks and passed through the town over to the base of Mount Revelstoke, where a short, steep trail was still open and relatively snow-free. It's named after ski jumper Nels Nelson, and clearly this is a sport that Revelstoke prides itself on. Climbing the trail, we got great views of town and the Columbia River. The water in the river here has traveled over 300 kilometers from our accommodations in Golden, near the river's headwaters. The Columbia snakes for 2,000 kilometers through the Rockies, down to Washington, and out to the Pacific. It's one of the larger rivers on the planet, with a drainage area the size of France. We came to the top where there was a very unique photo op.
Oh, you have to kind of lean forward. Yard sale!
So we finally found a hike that's open today here in Revelstoke National Park. Erin's living out her Olympic dreams.
I'm about to make my Olympic debut!
Biggest jump of her life. The great leap into married life.
I'm flying! Hi, hon!
Even better than the views was our wildlife sighting at the lookout, this northern pygmy owl. I see owls once in a while, but I've never had one perch for me like this one in close range. Imagine what a terror these silent flyers would be if you were a mouse. So we trotted back down the ski hill, all in all very satisfied with our hike, and began the drive back to Golden. The low cloud ceiling of Glacier had lifted considerably, so we soaked in a bunch of new mountain views on the return drive. The road here is very close to the mountains, giving them an even more imposing presence. The fog returned as we got closer to the valley, but by then it was almost dusk and we were approaching home. Well, that's it for our time in Golden. We're leaving this beautiful Airbnb. Haven't got too much of a view of the mountains because of the weather, but we got a good mountain drive today, and we're looking forward to that through Kootenay National Park. Kootenay was really an afterthought for our trip. We only chose it to avoid going back to Banff the same way. What a pleasant surprise we were in for. We traveled south down the valley through the town of Radium, which, despite the gloomy weather, still had that mountain town charm. As soon as we got into the park, I felt like we hadn't left nearly enough time for it. It had a distinct feel, characterized by more open woods and red rock, looking sort of like a cross between desert badlands and forested mountains. It's also home to the Radium Hot Springs, but they weren't open for the day yet and seemed to be in the midst of a large reno. As we drove north, a lookout sign came into view, and with so many trails closed for the season, we made the most of these.
So we stopped in a lookout in Kootenay National Park, which has been one of the biggest pleasant surprises of this trip. This is one of the best views we've seen, and the park itself has just been really interesting so far, and we have a long drive to go through it yet, so seeing the Rockies in these wintry conditions, late fall, early winter, is really cool, but a lot of the trails are closed, so we've had to see a lot from the car, making a spot like this extra valuable.
We were only a little way into the park, but already we were in love with it. We couldn't help but stop at every lookout, and this one gave us a ground level perspective of the valley we had just seen from above. The highway parallels the Kootenay River, and I imagined what a paddle it would be to float down it in a canoe. Long sections of the highway have wildlife fences to prevent collisions, and we spotted one deer behind it. This buck seemed pretty happy to be living there. A mountain stream caught our eye, and we couldn't recall ever seeing one freeze into such perfect tiered levels. There was also a burnt area nearby with an interesting story. The forest burnt in the early 2000s and again 15 years later. The pines didn't have time to mature and develop cones in that span, giving this relatively open meadow a chance to gain a foothold. Next was yet another pleasant surprise in this park, Numa Falls. Sometimes it can be best to not plan too many details of the trip and end up getting surprises like these.
Beautiful!
Oh my goodness. Wow.
A pair of friendly ravens appreciated this spot as well. We were nearing the north end of the park and our time here was running out far too quickly.
So we're just about to leave the park and just got through BC and we're back into Alberta. Kootenay was best park of the trip in my opinion, a real highlight, and I think it gets the short end of the stick in terms of reputation. Everyone knows about Banff, but not as many people in my circles talk about Kootenay, and it was amazing. Best day of the trip aside from the wedding for me.
Looks like we're getting one more spectacular view to send us off from Kootenay. Unreal.
Technically we were in Banff, looking south into Kootenay, but turning north to Banff, it's certainly no slouch and it deserves all the credit it gets. One very notable omission from our tour was Jasper. We've both been many years ago, and it deserves its reputation as well, but you can't see everything in one trip. We still had one very popular stop left in Banff at the Johnston Canyon. While lots of hiking trails were closed for the season, the upside of visiting the Rockies in November was that tourist hotspots have been relatively quiet, and we often had trails and lookouts to ourselves. Johnston Canyon in particular can be a zoo in peak season, so it was pretty cool to have a private show at Lower Falls. After that finale, we got back on the highway heading east toward Calgary. Day 12 was a highlight for scenery, so it was hard to think about leaving these mountains behind in a couple of hours. We needed one last supper in the Rockies, so we stopped in Canmore for some comfort food. Fish and chips and poutine.
Well, we just had our last meal of the trip in Canmore, and it's a little bittersweet to be leaving. Mountains are so special, and it's a trip of a lifetime. We might come back here, but it'll never be to get married, hopefully. So yeah, it's just an amazing experience to be back here. I love Ontario and the lakes and the rivers, but there's something special about the mountains. It's hard to leave.
Pretty amazing exploring to be done out here too.
Oh yeah. On our way back to Calgary. Be there in an hour.
The mountains started to fade away behind us, and suddenly we were back in Calgary and on our flight home the next morning. Erin and I have the pretty unique distinction of having our second date on video, and to an extent we can look back and watch our relationship unfold through the trips. Though little time has passed since this trip, I already know how precious this footage will be to us in the coming decades, as we age alongside the wonderful memories we made here in the Canadian Rockies.